What happened when an undercover CEO stepped into one of her own fabric stores, disguised as a part-time employee? She uncovered a toxic work culture, a manager abusing her power, and a team on the verge of burnout. Hello to all our amazing listeners. You truly know how to pick a good story. In today's episode, Threads of Truth, we follow a CEO who trades her title for a name tag and finds more than she bargained for. This isn't just about fabric and thread. It's about dignity, leadership, and change. Stay with us, because this story will stay with your heart long after it ends. The early autumn wind tugged at Isabelle Hartley's scarf as she stood outside Hartley Textiles, one of her company's most iconic storefronts in downtown Portland. The display window glowed with rich velvets, patent cottons, and spools of hand-dyed thread. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, she knew something had gone wrong. Customer complaints had tripled. 2 employees had quit within a month. Yet the store manager's reports always painted a rosy picture. Isabelle needed to see the truth herself, and she knew the only way to do that was to walk through those doors, not as the CEO, but as Bella, the new part-time assistant. Her usually sleek hair was tucked into a plain ponytail, thick-rimmed glasses changed the shape of her face, and her name tag read Bella Floor Staff. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of muslin and lavender cleaning spray greeted her. The store was beautiful, but the energy felt tense. Behind the counter, a stern woman with perfectly combed hair and a clipboard barked orders at a younger staff member. "You must be the new hire," she said without looking up. "Follow me, no time to waste." "Yes, ma'am," Isabelle replied, her voice even. She was in. No office, no title, just a staff apron and open eyes. Her undercover shift had officially begun. Isabelle followed Gretchen past the cutting tables and through a maze of neatly arranged fabric bolts, noting how each staff member seemed to stiffen when the manager walked by. The air inside the store wasn't just filled with the scent of textiles and starch, it was thick with unease. Behind the main counter, a petite young woman with chestnut hair was carefully folding a stack of imported linen. Gretchen's voice sliced through the air. "Sophia, how many times do I have to remind you? The beige goes on the right, not the left. Use your head." Sophia flinched and nodded quickly, her hands trembling slightly as she rearranged the stack. Isabelle watched from a few steps away, pretending to scan a shelf of buttons while absorbing the dynamic. There was no camaraderie here, no easy banter between coworkers, just silence and urgency, like everyone was walking on a threadbare edge. A customer approached Sophia with a question about upholstery fabric. Before Sophia could finish her thoughtful answer, Gretchen swooped in with a tight smile. "We recommend cotton canvas. If you're unsure, stick to the basics." The customer blinked, then nodded slowly. Sophia offered a small, apologetic smile, retreating back to her folding. As the customer walked away, Gretchen turned to Sophia. "You're not paid to ramble. Stick to quick answers, or I'll handle customer service myself." Isabelle's jaw tensed, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Every detail mattered now. The problem wasn't just poor management, it was public humiliation, micromanagement, and a culture of fear. Isabelle had worked on the floor herself years ago. She knew the rhythm of a good team, and this wasn't it. Gretchen wasn't leading, she was ruling. And Sophia, despite her clear talent and dedication, was shrinking more with each passing minute. Isabelle scribbled a mental note. Sophia, key staff. Gretchen, root issue, trust will take time. The surface looked polished, but underneath, things were unraveling fast. The break room was tucked behind a narrow hallway, past the staff-only door that creaked slightly on its hinges. It was small, windowless, and smelled faintly of reheated noodles and fabric starch. Isabelle entered with her lunch in hand, just a thermos and a simple sandwich to keep up the new hire illusion. Inside, 2 younger employees sat hunched over their phones, barely speaking. One of them, a stock clerk named Danny, gave Isabelle a sideways glance. "If you're smart, you'll keep your head down," she muttered, not unkindly. Gretchen doesn't like questions. Isabelle offered a quiet smile and took a seat, careful to keep her notebook hidden in her bag. After a few minutes, Sophia entered, her posture slightly slouched, lunch bag in hand. She gave a small nod to the others and took a seat in the far corner. Alone. She unpacked a hard-boiled egg, some crackers, and a tea sachet. Isabelle watched her movements, deliberate, quiet, methodical. The kind of habits you develop when you're used to being overlooked. Danny leaned over to Isabelle and whispered, "She's been here the longest, knows everything about fabric. But Gretchen hates her." Isabelle glanced at Sophia again, who now sat picking at her food, eyes distant. "Why?" she whispered back. Danny shrugged. "Probably because Sophia's good and Gretchen doesn't like competition." Another employee entered, asking loudly if anyone had seen her time card, only to be shut down by a sharp, "Figure it out," from the hallway. Gretchen's voice, unmistakable. Everyone stiffened. Isabelle noted the instant silence, the quick shifts in posture. Fear wasn't supposed to be part of a lunch break. She turned to Sophia, offering a gentle, "Hey, how's your day going?" Sophia smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just another Monday," she said, and Isabelle felt a deep, quiet ache settle in her chest. This wasn't just a store with management problems. It was a workplace where survival had replaced joy and resignation had replaced hope. The back room told the real story, and Isabelle was just beginning to listen. The store was at its busiest when it happened, mid-afternoon just after a sewing workshop ended, and customers flooded the fabric counter with bolts in hand and questions on their tongues. Isabelle was organizing spools of thread near the front when she heard the sharp sound of a fabric bolt slapping against the cutting table. She looked up to see Sophia carefully measuring out a length of expensive imported silk. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times before. A customer watched eagerly, chatting about the curtains she planned to sew. But just as Sophia reached for her shears, her elbow nudged the edge of the bolt, sending the rest of the silk unspooling onto the floor in a soft, crumpled heap. The room seemed to freeze. The customer gasped, murmuring, "Oh dear," and before Sophia could react, Gretchen stormed over, heels clicking like warning shots. "Are you kidding me?" she barked, her voice slicing through the store. "Do you have any idea how much that silk costs? Or are you just here to waste inventory?" Sophia's face was drained of color. She bent to retrieve the fabric, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I'll clean it up." "No, you'll stand back," Gretchen snapped. "You've done enough. Honestly. You're worse than the Temps. At least they try." The words hit hard, and Sophia visibly flinched. Isabelle instinctively stepped forward, her pulse racing, but caught herself. She couldn't break character, not yet. Instead, she knelt beside Sophia and helped refold the fabric, whispering softly, "It's okay. I've got you." Sophia didn't respond, but her eyes shimmered and she gave a small nod. The customer, clearly uncomfortable, mumbled something about coming back later and walked off. Gretchen crossed her arms and glared. "Clean it, then get back to cutting. No breaks until closing." Isabelle bit her tongue hard enough to taste blood. She had seen enough to know this wasn't an isolated incident. It was the norm. The customers weren't just witnessing poor service, they were watching someone's spirit being trampled. And now, so was Isabelle. But she wouldn't be watching for much longer. That evening, Isabelle sat at her kitchen table with her notes spread across a plain, spiral-bound notebook. Gone were the carefully typed corporate reports and color-coded spreadsheets she was used to. This time, she had handwritten names, scribbled observations, and pages filled with quiet truths. The image of Sophia's trembling hands as she folded the silk haunted her. So did Gretchen's words. Sharp, humiliating, unprovoked. Isabelle had built Hartley Textiles to celebrate craftsmanship, to create a safe space for makers and dreamers. Yet in this store, one of her most visible locations, that mission had unraveled. She stared down at her notes: chronic understaffing, public shaming, fear culture, no proper break system, high turnover, suppressed morale. She knew what she had to do, but she also understood the weight of it. Firing a manager was easy, rebuilding trust was not. She thought of Sophia, of how she whispered just another Monday in the break room, like this kind of treatment was simply part of the job. Isabelle clenched her pen. No, that wasn't acceptable. Not in her company, not in her name. As she closed the notebook, she knew the next shift wouldn't be about observing anymore. It would be about action. Tomorrow she would go back, not as Bella the assistant, but as a leader ready to set things right. The next morning, Isabelle returned as Bella, her name tag clipped neatly, her disguise intact but her resolve sharper than ever. The store opened to a quiet trickle of customers, but tension was already thick in the air. Sophia was restocking fabric samples near the front window, her movements careful, as if expecting a reprimand with every step. Behind the register, a teenage cashier named Caleb fumbled with the card reader, apologizing profusely to a customer when the system froze. Before anyone could assist him, Gretchen appeared like a storm cloud. "Unbelievable," she snapped, reaching over and yanking the receipt tape free. "Do I have to do everything myself?" Caleb flushed bright red, stammering something about the screen. "Save the excuses," Gretchen hissed. "You've been here 3 weeks, get it together." Sophia stepped forward gently. It might just need to be reset. But she didn't get to finish. "And you," Gretchen snarled, turning on her, "maybe stay in your lane for once. You can't even manage to fold silk without a meltdown." The entire store froze. Sophia stood there, shoulders tense, expression blank. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just nodded, turned, and walked back toward the cutting table. Isabelle's chest tightened. That moment, Sophia's silence, her resignation, was worse than a shouted protest. It was the silence of someone who had learned that speaking up changed nothing. And that was the moment Isabelle knew she couldn't stay quiet another second. She looked at Gretchen, who was already berating Caleb again, and felt the anger rise in her throat. Not a fiery rage, but a cold, steady certainty. It was time. No more notes. No more waiting. The next conversation wouldn't happen behind a clipboard. It would happen face to face. And this time the name tag wouldn't read Bella. It would read Isabelle Hartley, the woman who built this business and was about to reclaim it. The store had just closed when Isabelle finally made her move. The last customer had wandered out with a bundle of denim and some embroidery thread, and the automatic doors clicked shut behind them. Gretchen was in the back office, tapping away on the store's ancient computer, entering inventory numbers with sharp, irritated keystrokes. Isabelle stepped inside and quietly shut the door behind her. Gretchen didn't look up. "Make it quick, Bella, I still have payroll to process." Isabelle reached up, unclipped her name tag, and set it gently on the desk. Then she pulled her glasses off and tucked them into her apron pocket. Gretchen finally looked up. Confusion flickered across her face, followed by something closer to disbelief. "Wait, what is this?" Isabelle met her gaze with a calm, steady voice. "My name is Isabelle Hartley. I'm the founder and CEO of this company." The color drained from Gretchen's face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "I came here undercover," Isabelle continued, "because I needed to understand why this store had the highest turnover, the most complaints, and the lowest morale in the region. I didn't trust the reports. I wanted the truth." Gretchen stood slowly. If I'd known—" "That's the problem," Isabelle interrupted. "You treat people one way when you think no one's watching, and another when someone from corporate walks in. But this isn't about what you'd do if you were being watched, it's about who you are when you're not." Gretchen's expression hardened, her pride flaring up. "I run a tight ship. If they can't keep up, that's not my fault." Isabelle's eyes narrowed. "You don't run a team. You rule a staff through fear. I've seen you humiliate them, deny breaks, shame people for honest mistakes." She took a step closer. "This is not the culture I built this company on, and I won't allow it to continue." "You can't just fire me," Gretchen said, folding her arms. "Actually," Isabelle replied, her voice like steel, "I can, and I just did." Gretchen stared at her in stunned silence, then turned and stormed out of the office. Isabelle didn't flinch. The store had been misled for too long, but that ended now, with the truth and a clean slate. The energy in the store shifted the moment Gretchen left. Though no one had heard the full conversation behind the office door, the expression on her face and the fact that she walked out without saying a word spoke volumes. Isabelle stepped into the main floor, no longer in disguise, her posture calm but unmistakably authoritative. The staff had gathered instinctively, uncertain, eyes flicking between each other and the woman they'd known as Bella. Isabelle cleared her throat. "Hi," she began, her voice warm but steady. "My name is Isabelle Hartley. I'm not just a new hire. I'm the owner of Hartley Textiles." A wave of stunned silence swept through the room. Sophia looked especially frozen, the measuring tape still draped around her neck, fingers lightly gripping a pair of scissors. "I came here undercover," Isabelle continued, "because I heard something was wrong, And I didn't want to rely on reports or filtered emails. I wanted to see for myself. And what I saw, she paused, was unacceptable. The staff exchanged glances, uncertain of how to respond. Isabelle took a step closer. Gretchen is no longer with the company, effective immediately. The relief was almost visible. Shoulders dropped, brows lifted. A few breaths were audibly exhaled. You all deserve better. You've been holding this place together under pressure that no one should be expected to endure. Starting tomorrow, I'll be working with the regional team to restructure the leadership here, but starting now, breaks will be honored, overtime will be tracked, and respect will be non-negotiable. She turned her gaze to Sophia. And Sophia, I've watched you lead quietly, carry more than your share, and still treat everyone with kindness. You've set the standard. Thank you. Sophia's eyes widened, but she nodded slightly, emotion flickering behind them. For the first time, hope wasn't just a quiet wish. It was real, and it had a voice. The next morning, Isabelle arrived before the doors opened, not as Bella the Temp and not as a distant executive, but as a partner ready to rebuild. She wore no blazer, no clipboard, just a simple blouse, an apron, and her sleeves rolled up. The staff was quiet at first, unsure if her presence was symbolic or sincere. But that hesitation faded when she joined Sophia at the cutting table, measuring fabric, answering customer questions, and sweeping up stray threads between orders. Throughout the day, she rotated through every role, assisting Caleb at the register, helping Danny reorganize the embroidery shelf, and unloading a shipment in the back room. By lunch, the team had begun to talk again, not just to her, but to each other. Laughter returned in small bursts, replacing the tension that once hung in the air. Isabelle met privately with each employee, asking what they needed, what they wished for, and what they were afraid to say before. Nathan Cole, the regional director, arrived later that afternoon and was stunned at the transformation. Together, they discussed immediate improvements, anonymous feedback boxes, proper leadership training, and an open-door policy that actually meant something. By late afternoon, Isabelle gathered everyone in the break room. "This store doesn't just sell fabric," she said. "It holds stories, yours, mine, our customers. We stitch those stories together every day. But if we don't take care of the people behind the counter, the threads unravel." There was silence at first, then soft nods, even a few smiles. Sophia stepped forward, voice quiet but firm. "Thank you for not just saying that, for showing it." Isabelle smiled. "This is just the beginning, but we're going to rebuild this place the right way, together." And for the first time in a long while, the store didn't just feel like a workplace, it felt like a team. 1 week later, Hartley Textiles felt like an entirely different place. The walls hadn't changed, nor had the shelves lined with bolts of vibrant fabrics, but the atmosphere had transformed. Customers began to linger longer, drawn not just by the patterns and textures, but by the warmth in the air. Staff moved with ease, speaking freely, sharing laughter in quiet corners. Sophia now wore a new name tag, Assistant Floor Lead. It was a small promotion, but one that carried immense weight. She stood taller, her voice more confident, and her ideas, once silenced, were now leading daily operations. Isabelle visited often, always without fanfare. Sometimes she helped fold new inventory, sometimes she simply listened. She wasn't there to supervise, she was there to stay connected. Nathan had rolled out new training modules for all store managers, ones that emphasized emotional intelligence, communication, and active listening. Anonymous feedback boxes were already filling up, not with complaints, but with ideas and appreciation. The team even started a wall of wins where staff posted thank you notes to one another. "Thanks for jumping in during the lunch rush. Loved your fabric pairing for that customer. You made my day better." What was once a survival zone had become a place of shared purpose. One afternoon, as Isabelle helped a customer choose lining for a handmade coat, Sophia passed by and paused. "Did you think it changed this fast?" she asked quietly. Isabelle smiled. "Change starts slow, but once people feel safe, it grows fast, like thread catching tension on a machine and suddenly sewing something strong." Sophia chuckled softly, nodding. As the door jingled open and more customers filed in, the team greeted them not with rehearsed lines, but with real energy. Hartley Textiles had become what it was always meant to be, a place where people were seen, heard, and valued, not just for what they could do, but for who they were. And in that renewed culture, both fabric and people were finally given the space to breathe, stretch, and shine. Threads of Truth delivers a powerful lesson about leadership, empathy, and accountability. At its heart, the story reminds us that no matter how polished a business appears on the outside, its true strength lies in the people behind the scenes, the ones folding fabric, helping customers, and keeping everything running. Isabelle Hartley's decision to go undercover wasn't just about investigating complaints. It was about rediscovering the soul of her company. What she found was a culture suffering under toxic leadership, where good people were silenced and overlooked. But more importantly, she learned that change begins with listening, presence, and action. True leadership isn't about titles or corner offices, it's about being willing to roll up your sleeves, recognize harm, and take steps to repair it. By standing beside her employees rather than above them, Isabelle rebuilt trust, dignity, and purpose within her team. The story reminds us that workplaces should not only produce results, but also nurture respect. And when leaders choose to see, hear, and value their people, the impact ripples far beyond the shop floor. It sows strength into the very fabric of the company and into everyone it touches. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a visual quote card or YouTube outro.